right, welcome back to the show, everybody. It's truth time here at the TruthWire. I am your host, Craig Pasta Jardula. Still hasn't learned how to use the mute button yet. Yeah, fam. Yeah. You're more embarrassing yourself than I am embarrassing you. Still got that mute button on, huh? Really good. Yeah. You're still muted. Guys, thank you so much for joining this pickup show on Wednesday. Fee was on assignment, so therefore we had to push back the Monday show to Wednesday show. And we are here today. There's a lot of things to talk about. She was on the road for the Nasrallah funeral, which is going to give you a lot of insight to exactly how Hezbollah and the resistance, if there is a resistance left, is looked upon. Hey, look who learned how to use her microphone.
Would you stop? There's something wrong with this connector. It literally shuts off like every now.
It's the connector. I love that. That's what I.
Yeah, it was on.
It's the connector.
It is the connector. Literally.
I don't even know her. How am I going to connect her?
It's the connector.
Fam, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
All right. You're a little off center, but that's okay. We'll go.
Fam, I just got back. Literally. Like, you have no idea how busy I am on a daily basis.
Can you say it in a British accent? You just got back.
Why would I say it in a British accent?
Because you always go literally.
I do say that a lot. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that.
I love you. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. I'm glad to see you are safe back from the trip that really is, I got to tell you, it kind of fell by the wayside from a lot of people paying attention to what's going on in the States. I think it's so important, this event, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is going to speak volumes if, in fact, there is a resistance left over. After the fall of Syria, a lot of people, fam, you weren't supposed to answer that question there. I'm setting
there is. It shouldn't even be a question.
Let me set the table before you bite into the steak. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people who feel that it is over, right? They feel like after Syria fell, and we'll also talk about it today, fam. I don't think it's a surprise. It's not breaking news, but the ceasefire has been broken and the phase 2 has not been negotiated upon. I think we've said on this show before, there's no such thing as a ceasefire because Israel ceases the fire. And March 1st, fam, which is like 3-4 days away, all hell's going to break loose because now Israel has those 2,000-pound bombs from one of the most distracting presidencies to ever lay foot in the Oval Office. I yelled at Jayme before the show, CheeseSlice, I'm done. I don't want to hear anything that equates to some type of 4D chess going on. Well, maybe we get this or maybe we get that. Or, on Union of the Unwanted, me, Courtney Turner, who's going to come back on the show soon. We love her. Steve Poikonen. There was another guy who really, he's a writer. We broke out into it again. Then T. Snyder joined in there. They want to kind of, and they almost sound like shit libs or progressives, fam. Well, at least we got this. Remember when the PSL was clapping like crazy when they heard there was a ceasefire? Well, at least we got that.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's a fucking distraction. Take it away.
Well, it's the same exact thing, right? It's exactly the same thing, and they don't see it. Look, the Donald Trump presidency is one of continuity. It is one of just continuing what was set up by Biden before him, and Biden continued what was set up by Trump, and Trump continued what was set up by Obama. If we're still pretending that it's anything beyond that, I think we don't understand. You can point out like, oh, it's great to see Samantha Power cry about being out of a job, or it's great to see all of the USAID or USAID people completely just out of a job, these people that have been working in these pro-democracy groups. But where is that all going? And we've talked about this ad nauseum, I think myself and you here, as well as I've talked about it with Vanessa Beeley, where it's basically just being repurposed into the State Department, into the technocratic side of things. And there's a couple of things that have developed since, but I don't want to rehash all of that because I really want to talk about what it was like to be at Saeed Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, the general secretary of the Hezbollah, and he's a leader, but he was so much more than a leader to all of these people, and I don't think you really understand that until you really get to witness it. And it was really impactful just being there and seeing all of that. It's hard to put into words, and it's like a rare time when I don't have words for things. But in this case, it was just one of the times where it was hard for me to put into words what I was feeling, what I was seeing. And it's best to let the actions speak for themselves. And, Jayme, you can show some of the stuff once in a minute, but yeah, we can get started.
You want to start by answering that question, or do you want to end by answering the question that I posed? Is there still a resistance?
I can start by answering that because I don't think that should be a question. It's a given. The resistance is there. I think it's a very Western-centric view to say that, because of the fall of Syria and everything else, that means there's no resistance. No, this was brutal. I mean, the fall of Syria has made a lot of us question everything. And after that, I think there has been a shift in my geopolitical thinking, not in terms of more negativity or being quote unquote black-pilled, but in terms of really seeing that there are governments that are fully willing to sacrifice Syria. And it's not just one or two. It's the reality that the non-aligned axis is completely disjointed. They have different purposes, different objectives, so to speak. And the resistance is extremely vulnerable. But that does not mean that these people are going to stop fighting. It is something that's within them, and they don't view things the way we view it in the United States or in Europe, in the UK, the West. We view things as, okay, well, we're going to achieve this objective, and there's a practical means to it. 100%. If success means that you bomb more people, success means that you kill all of Hezbollah, success means this. The way they look at things is more of like, I'm willing to die for this cause that I believe in because this cause is much greater than myself. And we have a very individualistic point of view about things versus that collectivist view, like Hassan Nasrallah represents the resistance in all of us. And that was what I saw there at the funeral in essence.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining in, Fiorella Isabel, boots on the ground, just got back from on assignment, Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, the ex-security general of Hezbollah, if I'm correct. I want to make sure I get that right, fam. I made a point to try to remember what positions and what, because it's kind of interesting when you start looking at the Knesset in Israel, you sometimes lose track of these disgusting statements that are being made. From what I gathered from what you said is that despite what the governments are doing, the negotiations that are going to go on behind the scene, you've seen actual people within this movement saying, I don't care what's happening. I'm willing to die for this cause because it's a cause worth dying for.
Yeah. I mean, what else are they going to do? This is extermination. It's an existential thing, right? And like, this is again, and I think for a lot of people, for example, you could talk about the people in the Donbass, right? They were fighting for an existential cause themselves because they were being killed by Nazis. In this case, the Palestinians, the people of Gaza, the people of Lebanon, the people of Hezbollah, the resistance. You can extend that to Yemen, the Syrian people that were there. All of these people were fighting against Western Empire and Zionist Israel. So if they allow the entirety of the resistance to just completely self-destruct, then they're going to be eradicated. This is the attempt, and this is what this administration, the most Zionist administration, and I'm going to say that every single time, is tasked to do. They're tasked to come in, and I don't know if you can add, Jayme, that picture that Trump posted with all the him and Netanyahu sitting on a beach, and like it was kind of like, I don't know if you guys saw that.
Trump posted
I'll find it. Yeah, on Truth Social, and it was on Sky.
He also posted a video, fam, about Gaza, like a little small 30-second video. I have that too as well.
Yeah,
the guy is signaling what's going on. The most Zionist fucking cabinet of all times of any presidency. It is true. And that is one of the major goals that is moving forward. A lot of the other stuff we see is distraction gate, right? It's all about
Yeah.
keeping you looking at the woke bullshit, right? This whole one-sided, transparency, we're going to audit this
Woke
stuff, is to move forward the greatest Zionist project. Go ahead, sorry.
and anti-woke.
Yeah.
Because like woke, what they mean is, it's the right saying, oh, this other stuff, trans, LGBTQ, blah blah blah. And then on the other hand, their obsession with it goes both ways. The obsession from the right with it's in and of itself a reflection of that. They literally don't want anybody saying the words from the river to the sea. They don't want people to speak on behalf of Palestine. They want to deport the people, and this is Donald Trump saying this too, right? They call them terrorist supporters, terrorist sympathizers. I mean, since I've been there, and I posted this dumb picture, like, because I was writing something, and I can probably tell you, you can go through my social media and you won't find me like taking photos of being inside by rubble or by destruction, because I don't like that, because I think it's like war tourism, and it's not really something I like to do. And the whole time I was there, I didn't take a single picture where I asked someone, hey, take my picture of me being here. I didn't do that. I really wanted to show the audience and the people and their emotions and how they were just feeling in the moment. And so I took one picture with like the people in the background, and I posted something, and we can show it in a minute, and it got 20,000 likes. I don't know why. I hate the fact, and I remember this back in the Bernie days. If there is a picture of a person, right, whether it's a woman or a man or something, that gets so much more attention than when I post about, like, textual stuff, like important things that I want to get attention. I'm shadow banned as hell. I have no idea why that even went viral. I wish other things would go viral. Things like of what I'm talking about, the deep political, geopolitical things that happen. And so I got just completely slammed with a bunch of Zionist trolls saying, I wish they would have finished everybody
Right.
off, blah, blah, blah. And all of these things, just like,
Hold
just
on one
completely
second, fam.
awful.
1 second. I hate the family. Jayme, go live on the Rockfin.
What's going on?
We're not live on Rockfin.
Oh, okay.
We had Alila. I can't hear you, Jayme. We live now? So
Aren't
sorry,
they?
guys. Just pause. Hold this for 1 second. We're trying to get the Rockfin live. We don't even know how long that platform is going to last, fam. There's been
Yeah.
a lot of stuff going on, but I still want to make sure we're going live there, because there are a group of people who have told me they're still only watching content there, and they miss a lot of our content, and they're very happy to see us back with the TruthWire. So we're in it. We're good. So, fam, we are here with Fiorella Isabel. Just got back, boots on the ground from the Hassan Nasrallah funeral, the ex-security general of Hezbollah that was assassinated by the Zionist nation of Israel. There were how many people, fam, at the funeral? And please continue.
In mainstream media, including Reuters, reported over 1 million people. There are reports from the media, there 1.4 million people. And people have, they went under this thread and they were like, that's impossible. The stadium can only hold 60,000. Okay, whatever. I don't exactly know how much the stadium can hold, but there were people outside of the stadium, and they were all watching in outside screens. And there was people coming from Iraq, from Iran, from Syria. There was the Qassam brigades. There was the prime minister of Iran. There was Iraqi officials. There were, just all kinds of people coming for this. There were Christians that went there, and I'm going to go through all of this. So let me just go through it pretty quickly. So what I want to start off by pointing out is that the day of the funeral, right? Israel, the night before, hours in the early morning hours, they started attacking southern Lebanon. I had been in southern Lebanon. I forgot to put it in the folder. It's been a very busy day, but I've been in southern Lebanon. I was there actually at the border between Palestine. It was the border between the West Bank, the occupied West Bank that's controlled, that has the Israeli military there, and Lebanon. And so I went with a group of, well, I'm not going to get into that, but I went with some journalists. There was a lot of people from everywhere, and there were different groups. And all of the different groups took a trip here on whatever day, right? And you saw Palestine there, and you also saw the Israeli military there that always has their weapons pointed in this direction because they have been threatening and they have been shooting a lot of the locals there, right? And so the Israeli army is there, and so there was the destruction that had happened earlier in Lebanon was very, very deep there in this area, and there was completely demolished residential houses, completely demolished neighborhoods where it's literally just people living in their houses and that's it. And so we did a walk through that, and we saw the just how everything was, and it's just obviously I've seen destruction, I've seen it in Donbass, but this was just on a bigger scale. We're not talking just like a couple of houses or a center of a marketplace. We're talking about the complete and total eradication of property and stuff, and people were coming back and digging through the rubble, and I'm going to have more of this out. And they were pretty much sifting through to try to find some of the things that they could salvage from this rubble, and they're going back and rebuilding, and there were tractors clearing the rubble. And reportedly there have been people that have been recently lifted from the rubble that didn't even know that Hassan Nasrallah was dead, because they actually survived for months underneath that, if you can believe that. And they didn't even know that he was alive, that he wasn't alive, excuse me. And so this was such a big this funeral. It was, I mean, you all know Marwa Osman. She works for Press TV, and she's an amazing friend and journalist. And she was actually doing an interview in RT right when she found out this, and the trolls try to use it against her. But that is how deeply impactful this was for a lot of those people. They were breaking down when they saw the funeral and all of that. But we all got to see what Israel does and how easily they attack. So the hours before the funeral, Israel yet again attacked southern Lebanon, and during the funeral, they flew their fighter jets over the funeral. So they very well knew what they were doing. They tried to intimidate people. They tried to instill a sense of uncertainty before the funeral took place. They were trying to get people to not go. They were saying there were going to be attacks. A lot of people, they were trying to basically get people to not go. And people were going to go, snow, rain, shine, whatever, right? So you can see in this article, the I-24 News article, they admit that the Israeli warplanes flew over the funeral, and they had struck terror sites. This is what they said. They said terror sites in Lebanon, residential areas, by all accounts, right? And
it's amazing they can still use this language and get away with it. Amazing. Terror sites. Terror. As if this is not the conservative or populist right language that mirrors the left of hate speech, then I don't know what the fuck is. And if people don't wake up to this shit, because these are the constant tricks they play. Remember, fam, they say you play shit games, you win shit prizes. But this is just ridiculous that they can say terror sites, and people are okay with this. And let me just put that out there for the record as we are going into this, because it baffles my mind that people lived under the rubble for how long, that they flew these jets by over there. This is the most unchristian thing we as a society can do. Not only are we funding this, we are paying for this, that the blood is on our hands. We are not even just condoning it, we are selling it. We are propping it up. We are okaying it and saying it is okay to kill these people here because they're of a different religion. It's disgusting. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever faced in my entire life. And it is the most unchristian thing that could be done. So I hope that you all out there who are Christians, who think that this is okay and are justifying this, what the state of Israel is doing, look in the mirror. Go ahead, fam.
So, according to the Israeli military, they said that there have been violations by Hezbollah because they have been storing quote unquote weapons in these areas, in these residential areas, and they're not supposed to do that because Israel can control what happens in Lebanon. And in a way, I mean, the government of Lebanon is not the same as Hezbollah. There's differences, right? But in a way, Israel, this is what they do. And so then they say, oh, Hezbollah has violated a ceasefire that they had between them. They also will do the same thing when it comes to Hamas. And they've been saying, oh, Hamas has violated the ceasefire. So we're going to attack them, right? And the reality is, we all know who the culprit is, who has violated multiple ceasefires, who has never adhered to them. And we knew this from the start, but this is what's been happening. So they did this and it didn't matter. People still went. I mean, they didn't care. In fact, after we saw the fighter jets, people were cheering. They were saying, the words "death to Israel," right? They were saying this because for them, this is a settler, genocidal, colonial entity that has no right to be there, because they that's what Israel did. Israel began with Palestine and then continued moving, and that is the plan. So for them, and I think for the rest of the world that has witnessed what Israel has done, they're seeing that this is exactly completely unjustified. And so that's why they were saying that. And I think what happens, and you'll see this when we hear some of the videos, what ends up happening is that people don't understand Arabic, right? And you're watching this as a Westerner and you hear Allah Akbar or you hear all these things. And so people who lack an understanding as to what all of this means automatically go into this fear mode and they vilify that which they do not understand. And I'm sorry to say that is a colonial settler mindset. I mean, we're talking about the people who have their roots to this region, and it's, we can get into what Lebanon is. Is it really a national state that's free and independent itself, or should it have been a part of Syria? There's so much dialogue that can go into that. But the reality is they have connections, the people of these regions, for centuries. And they were there long before Israel was created with the help of the United Kingdom. So yeah, it's crazy when all of this gets brought up. But first of all, I want to go into the next tweet, Jayme, if you can do that, and bring that up.
You gotta be a little more specific because I've been going through a whole bunch of them.
Just the third one. It's the first one after the I-24 news.
Okay.
In the thing. Yeah.
There you are, fam.
Okay, so we can play this video actually, and I can talk through it, right? So again, it's hard to. There are moments in that video where I was pretty emotional, and I didn't expect that. And again, it's not necessarily that oh, you got emotional. It's like everybody there was an air of mourning, but they were also celebrating what Hassan Nasrallah was to them. And just seeing the people, how affected they were, that's what got to me. It wasn't even because I'm not Shia, I'm not, religious or anything. It doesn't matter. It's just the energy of that event was, everybody was, you could tell they were impacted. So yeah, you can go ahead and play it, Jayme, and I'll
so we're here at the stadium, media walking around, seeing all of the people who are here to see Hassan Nasrallah, and it is an incredible thing. I don't think I've experienced anything like this. I don't think I ever will again. This is emotionally charged. The energy here is astounding. The energy here is beyond comprehension. Every single person here understands something much bigger than what we could ever comprehend in the West. I mean, right now, I mean, what he meant is so much more than just in general, than just a political figure. He is just a representative of the spirit of the resistance, and yeah, it's hard to describe. You have to see it for yourself, and I'm so honored to be here witnessing this historic moment with everybody. There are people in here, there are people outside, there are people just pretty much everywhere right now. And it's a beautiful sunny day. It's cold, but you know, it's beautiful. The images of all the people here, I mean, this is just indescribable. I can't, I have no words. What it means to be here. Just the energy is beyond comprehensible. And outside, it's even worse. There's just so many people here. And Israel is right now attacking South Lebanon. They have been for a while. And this is something that really just shows that they seek to destroy the Lebanese people, the people of the resistance from Iran, from Iraq, from Syria, from all over the place are here. Yeah. And they're not going to be able to destroy this. This is something that cannot be destroyed. Like they say, you can kill the man, but you don't destroy the movement. Well, you don't destroy the resistance. You don't destroy this. This, I mean, this cannot be destroyed, really. Everything we're seeing right now, incomprehensible. And I just quickly want to show you all. I'm in a sea of people. And it is absolutely just, I'm honored to be here. This is something that I think will be unforgettable. And there's just so much that we can learn from people here instead of us in the West having the last word, us saying how we feel about something. No, it's the people of the West who need to learn from them.
So I can talk through this one so you can lower it because you can just keep it there. So yeah, I just want to highlight on that point, like, because, you know, as a Westerner visiting, you get a lot of requests for interviews. People are very interested in what you have to say and what you're seeing, which I totally understand. And I think it's our job to really, you know, pretty much break down a lot of the lies that are thrown out there, right? But I have spoken to some people, some organizers there, some people that I'm friends with that are from the region, right, and from Lebanon, and I say, you know, really, I think we need to push that focus back on the people there, because what I mean, what are you going to learn from me? I mean, I'm just observing what I see, what we're seeing there.
And people are staying for the rest of the speakers, but they are going
this
to
is when
continue to leave
funeral,
and follow the coffin until
turn it down. This is when his funeral,
Yeah.
this is when his funeral came, the coffin came through, and I was in the journalist area.
Turn off the volume completely, Jayme. Thank you. Go ahead.
This is when the coffin was making its way through, and the journalist area was completely just like, people were trying to see, they were trying to like get photos of it, and now this is just right outside. So then what happened was the people were leading the procession to actually bury him, right, and put him on the ground. But you know, what I was saying is like, I do think that there's so much we can learn from this, even just thought process of how they view things versus how we view things, and in understanding and bridging that understanding that it's vastly different. We get to the bottom as to why there's so many, you know, oh, these terrorists, you know, blah 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 blah, they're terrorists. Because if you hear what they're saying and you don't know what they're saying, it can sound intimidating to some people, I think, that haven't traveled much and that just get easily swayed by whatever. And so I think there's a lack of understanding in culture more than politics, actually, what that is used and weaponized by the defense industry, by the intelligence apparatus, to basically manufacture consent against people that you don't understand. People were saying, why weren't you wearing you know, a hijab? I don't have to wear a hijab. In Lebanon, this people don't know. In Lebanon, you don't have to wear a hijab. If you want to, you can wear one. You don't have to. It's every single country has different rules. In Iraq, I didn't have to, unless I went to a very conservative area in Karbala when I was there. I went to go to this march. There it's a more conservative region, so you like to see women covered up, and I respected their customs in Iraq. And Iran, the same thing. It's a little bit different, but in Lebanon and Syria before, you didn't have to. I mean, people were walking around normally, and it's normal to us, but to them, it doesn't matter if people wear a hijab or not. This is, I mean, this hyper focusing on this sort of thing um, is really something that the intelligence apparatus has done well. Is get us to focus on freedom equals not wearing a hijab. Like that's just so just reductionist and again a Western centric point of view. Like there's very different perceptions on all of that. And I think when I was in Lebanon, for example, you can drink. There are bars. It's a very different city. It's definitely French well, Beirut is definitely French influence. You also have Christians there. You have a Christian district in Beirut. You have Orthodox. You have Christian Catholics, which pasta are different than Roman Catholics, but the church looks more like Orthodox, but it's actually Catholic. They were having a baptism in this church I visited, and I thought it was an Orthodox church, but it wasn't. There's so many different things that we really just don't know, and I hope to bring some of that illumination. That's the most I can do. I think we just need to keep looking to these people. I have never met more people that have more strength as the people of these regions, because a lady who lost her husband interviewed me, and she just lost her husband. Her husband died not too long ago. He was killed by Israel, and she just looked at me and was like, "Can I please do an interview with you?" And she was just continuing. They've been bombed endlessly, sanctioned endlessly. They've been vilified as terrorists, and they have this strength to just continue and move on and rebuild. I don't think we could do that. That's why I say it, not because I want to send hate to the United States, or the people of the US, but I'm saying when there's chaos in the US, one thing goes wrong, everything falls apart. We couldn't function without electricity for a few hours. In Lebanon, the electricity turns off randomly and then comes back on. It happens all the time. And so there are just these little things that we just wouldn't know how to deal. If we were bombed to oblivion, how would we come back from that? I think there's so much to learn from their strength and their resistance and their just quest to continue fighting no matter what. And we can't really, it's hard to teach that. You kind of just have to see it. Yeah.
Fam, I think that that is sometimes the most important thing to humanize, a society. I think that the fact is that our media for quite some time, I shared a tweet the other day. I don't know why it was in my timeline. I didn't follow the guy. Nobody I know reposted him. And it was a picture of a guy jumping to his death off of the World Trade Center. And it was, what was underneath it was just so disgusting. It literally said, kind of mad to think that Islam was welcomed into the West after this happened. And a guy just, falling off the World Trade Center. And this is the stuff that they're posting out there. This is the stuff that they're sharing. They want to demonize a culture and a group of people again. I mean, I think when I think about the Cuba video I did with the baseball, trying to connect people to like, hey, these are children. They're human beings. Just look at it. I think that we need more of that. And I'm glad you've done this work over there, because they are demonized as a society. You know what I'm saying? I mean, uber religious people are back again now with this Trump administration playing the Christianity game, right? Like, oh, these are just Islamists. They are dangerous. They are fundamentally,
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, terrible. I mean, just disgusting what Tulsi Gabbard is doing. And what Tulsi Gabbard is doing is the justification, is the manufacturing of consent of why Israelis say they have a right to justify the killing Arabs in Gaza. They're gonna grow up to be terrorists anyways, right? They're gonna want to kill us anyways, is what they say, because they try to say that they're inherently inhuman, right? That they're animals, they're human animals, and this is the stuff that combats that. So I'm really glad that you got to do some of this work over there.
Yeah, and since we've been on this for a while, I just kind of want to go through some quick just down the line, Jayme. So this next one is, I believe it's the bodyguard of Hassan Nasrallah. He was with him, if I'm not mistaken. I want to make sure that's what it is before I talk about it. It's the 4th, I believe. Oh no, this is exactly. Yeah. So there was a Yemeni delegation there, and they gave the Abu Ali, who was Saeed Hassan Nasrallah's personal guard, a Jambia dagger from Ahmed, symbolizing bravery, honor, and dignity. So this guard was with Nasrallah since he was like just basically a kid, right? Since he was a kid, and he thought he didn't think this would happen. And it did. I mean, Nasrallah was killed, and it's insane. I just wanted to highlight that this is his number one guy, and he was one of the ones in the funeral procession that you saw when in the video where they were handing out like I don't know what it's called, but it was like some sort of like incense type of thing. They were throwing like all of that that was on his coffin. So things like that. It's just very unique to see that. I didn't know all of the different things that happen, right? And why, for example, Hassan Nasrallah wasn't buried till now. I asked that question to one of my friends who's from there, and she said they had to wait until the resistance organized this funeral because he was such a big figure to everybody, and they had to wait, and then he was put in another place until he was then moved for this funeral. So it's a whole thing, it's a whole procedure, because I was wondering like why wasn't he buried immediately like how we do it, right? And so that was different as well. The next thing I want to highlight is real quick the fact that there were Christians. My friend Miriam, she's a Christian, right? And when I said that there were Christians at this funeral, people were like, "You're lying. There were no Christians there." No, that there were Christians. There were people that were just not even religious that attended, because it's beyond religion. This is what I mean when I said that. Yes, I know that it's an Islamic funeral, and that people who attended were majority Islamic, and not just Sunni, but majority Shia, right? And so I get it, but that doesn't mean that people did not support him who were Christians or who were of other faiths. And people have a hard time understanding that. For example, in Syria, there were Christians, and there still are. They're the ones being attacked. The Alawites are being attacked. It's not just Sunni and Shia Muslims that have been affected by this, because the resistance is more of an ideological like thing that it's beyond, I think, when people understand religion. So it was one of the most important things, I think, to highlight that there were people of other faiths that were there, because then they don't get to make it about just, oh, it's this Islamic attempt to take over the world and all of that. So I wanted to highlight that as well. Just seeing what's the next thing, because we've been here for a while on this topic. But did you add something, Pasta? Did you add a couple
No,
things?
not to there. I mean, and I obviously the next section, which is kind of piggybacking off this. But I do have some questions, fam.
Yeah.
So if it would be a good time for a question, I think that you showed this. I think you showed the diversity. I really do believe it's crazy because, when a lot of people start talking about the fact that there is only it's about a fight over religion for one dominant religion, that the Muslims where Arabs want to fight and they're persecuting Christians and Jews. And this is why we're here. All the wars that we have sponsored and everything we've done have actually been against Christianity in the last, 10 years. Like when we talk about Iraq, or 20 years, I should say, we talk about Iraq. There were more Christians in Iraq. I think there were more Christians in Iraq and Syria, some in Lebanon over the last, couple decades. That's where most of them existed. We funded and backed these groups. Under Saddam, Christians existed. I remember there was a famous either radio speech he had. He said they might be Christians, but they're Iraqi Christians, and we will protect them for that. They have a right to do so. Well, when we funneled all this opposition to Saddam Hussein, because on the behalf of weapons of mass distraction, well, we eliminated a lot of Christian sites. A lot of Christians had to leave. That's it. Same thing for Syria. A lot of Syrian Christians were there. As we were funding a civil war, what they like to say, a civil war, but it's not really a civil war. It's a proxy war in which, the State Department, the CIA, all groups involved were funding every single side of that war to kill each other, right? So Christians had to lead. Assad had protected them at one point. Now they're gone. And now a lot of any Christians now inside Aleppo, forget about it, what they'll do to them. So it's us who are actually fueling these actions, not these resistance groups, or not Hezbollah, not Hamas. It is us who's doing so. And I think that's a big misconception out there.
Yeah. And the fact that the resistance equals terrorists, I mean, that's the caveat that they've used. Any defense against Israel is terrorism, and that's what it's become. David Miller was also there. So a lot of people were there. I mean, a lot of people were there. And David Miller said that in southern Lebanon, which is, again, where I also was at, a mile from the border of occupied Palestine, less than, in a site of colonial settlement and an occupation force bases embedded in the settlement. I came across this. It's a 1,000-foot detonation cord with, as it says, an inline initiator. It is for laying explosive charges and blowing up the homes of local people. This is what they use most often. In the place I found this, there was ample evidence of thousands of homes destroyed by detonations. Yes, but also by bulldozer, tank shell, and missile. And as you can tell, the label is printed in English, suggesting that it was supplied most probably by the U.S. Perhaps we can find out from the code number which death firm manufactured it. This is Zionism. # dismantle Zionism. I want to, I don't know if you can, zoom in to that, but it is made in English. This is similar to what I found when I went to Donbass, the U.S. made bombs from Lockheed Martin and all of these other places. Are we proud of this when we see this? If you see the destruction of these houses in Lebanon, the people that were there, many of them killed, many of them still missing in the rubble, and then you see this is now in English writing. This is our government doing this. And when they chant death to America, they mean death to the American government. They mean death to the defense industry, the intelligence that is doing this to them, their people, that has been doing this to them for decades. They don't mean death to us. In fact, the people, whether it's been Russia, whether it's been Iran, whether it's been Lebanon, all of the people in all of the places I've been to, and you can probably attest to this, Pasta, in Latin America as well, they are far more kind about Americans and the American people than we are. That we're far more critical, because at least I am, especially me, because we know what this is, we know where it's from, right? But I laughed with Vanessa because we were interacting with some people from there, and we were like, oh, we're so much more critical of our own governments than they are. And so this idea that they're against the American people, that they want a destruction of the American people, it's not true. I mean, I'm sure it exists in many, maybe small pockets, but the vast majority of the people of the region want us to see what's happening. They want to bring us there. They love to hear us say, look, this, to get a glimpse into their world. And I don't want that to be something that's completely warped, that these people want to destroy the innocent people that live in these countries. That's not the case. They are going against the governments.
Yes, absolutely. But these are the things, see, fam, I think those arguments that they put out there, that rhetoric, that death to Americans, that, when you talk to a commoner, a normie, about what's going on in Israel, they're like, oh man, all the people, they're surrounded by all these people who hate them. It must be crazy. They only see the propaganda that's in front of them. I wouldn't think that they're proud of the bombing that's going on. A lot of the people, however, fam, I think they feel it's justified. And that's the problem. They manufacture consent to do what they're going to do, the empire, through their proxies in the media, that being the mainstream media, They've co-opted so much of independent media. Oh my God, what's going on with independent media now is scary. And there's a lot of useful idiots out there. You know what I'm saying? People who want things to be good. Oh, let's look at the positives here. What positives? Everything is going according to plan. And they are moving along the greater Zionist project. They are moving along less checks and balances within our government. They are moving along the extinction of the Palestinians. They are moving along with their plan. And it really is a shame that it's going on, and it's justified. So, I mean, I don't know what, fam, did you find any solutions as far as, or what you think might be, even though you found people who were ready to lay their life on the line, did you see anything that would kind of culminate in some type of plan moving forward on how the resistance can stand? Because as we're getting into this next section, you're going to see March 1st, it's on again like Donkey Kong for the Zionist nation. And this time, fam, they got the 2,000-pound bombs that the Biden administration wouldn't even give them. And by the way, too, Israel doesn't even have the planes to drop them. So it's going to be what? American planes dropping these bombs. Do you see any type of plan moving forward for the resistance to stop the extinction of the Palestinians? Or is it
they're going to fight no matter what. I mean, I don't know what their plan is, because first of all, if I was them, I would make sure to keep that plan very much in the down low.
Yeah.
I don't think these people are just going to allow Palestine, especially Hezbollah, to just go away. But there is a lot of emphasis on what Iran will do, right? If Iran pivots to the West and basically says, all right, well, we're going to work something out, then it just really would handicap a lot of the resistance. They will not stop fighting. They're not going to allow. It breaks my heart to think that, all the people we saw there, all the friends that I have there, are just going to lose everything when Israel comes in, because that is Israel's intent. And we have seen threat of HTS now coming into Lebanon, because you have Syria and you have the West Bank, right? Israel. So, and Palestine surrounding, bordering Lebanon, right? So you have those possibilities happening. And you also had Israel recently attack Syria, certain strategic whatever locations that they had. So this isn't going to go away. People think that the ceasefire began and therefore there's a nice little bow on the Palestine issue. No, this is the beginning, unfortunately.
Hey, fam,
of all of that.
No Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump for bringing a ceasefire to the table?
No, that's for Russia, Ukraine. So we're going to get into that.
Oh, that's where his Nobel Peace Prize. And you know what they're going to do, fam? They're going to put us in a compromising position, saying, look at the pasta and fee. There's a chance for the war to end in the Ukraine, and yet they're still being black pill idiots who think there's no hope or whatnot. And we're going to hear this. This is what we're going to hear, and they're going to credit Donald Trump for this no matter what.
Yeah. Well, we'll explain that. I mean, you can be happy. I don't lose sleep at night if you're happy or not about it. But the truth is a lot more nuanced. I like to use that word, nuanced, than what people make it out to be. Like, yay, nay. Like there's a lot more nuance to everything. The last thing we can show, Jayme, is this what you have up here. There was an estimated 1.4 million participants, one of the largest funerals in history. A lot of people didn't show it, including some Gulf affiliated Arab outlets, by the way. Mainstream media, alternative media, really, a lot of them weren't really covering this. So yeah, I think it's good for people to see some of the photos and really understand like what happened. And I mean, it's hard in this. It's a short amount of time. I know we've gone on a while talking about it, but I think it's actually a relatively short amount of time to try to encapsulate what happened. And again, there's more footage I have of the destruction itself of Lebanon. But I mean, this is, anytime we've tried to do something like this, it just doesn't work out in the States, like, right? We've seen the Trump rallies, the Bernie rallies, all of this stuff. But I mean, Jesus, the biggest rally is nothing compared to this. I mean, this is somebody that will be remembered forever. He's going to be iconicized in this way, right? He already is. And one of the things that I think Nasrallah did encapsulate was just this very much like humble, non-arrogant type of character, and that really was focused on the people. So
Truly amazing, fam. Great stuff. I'm glad you got to attend it. I can understand how you can be filled with emotion. I mean, just an amazing thing. I'm glad that you did get a chance to go there and check this out. It truly is. It's epic. It really is. And I'm glad you're doing this type of reporting. It's amazing. Guys, thank you so much for following us today. It's True Time at the TruthWire. Fiorella, boots on the ground, on assignment, was in Lebanon for the Hassan Nasrallah funeral. He was the last security general of Hezbollah. People from all over the world came to see him. And yes, fam, you were saying? Sorry.
Secretary General.
General. Sorry. Did I say that? Even though the Israeli jets buzz over you, Fiorella, they will never defeat the spirit of the willing. That must have been crazy. I saw somebody holding up a shoe.
Yeah.
I think that's really symbolic and what that really means.
Yeah.
If you guys don't remember the shoe being thrown at George W. Bush when he was in Iraq, when they use the shoe, it's a sign of disgrace. Unlike Italian moms who want to use their wooden clogs to throw at you just for pain. By the way, fam, I did a little segment on RTDE and
RT Deutsch,
and they dubbed over my voice, so it's pretty kind of cool. I was talking about the USAID and the NED, and I have it in the corner looking for my segment. They sent it to me. It was pretty awesome. What is up with RT Deutsch? They were suspended for a while, but now they're on. Where are they airing? And they got a lot of. Let me tell you this much. On Rumble right now, fam, RT Deutsch has. Let me see how many. They have literally 3,600 watchers right now. That's pretty good. So I don't know where they're at.
Yeah, that's more than RT International gets. Yeah. So,
nice. Where's it airing, by the way?
I don't know, actually. It's somewhere online. They don't really have that much programming. They're in the same building as RT International, so I don't really know where they're being shown, because it might be shown in other like in the East and South. I don't know. It's weird. I have no idea where it's being shown, because like it's not being shown in Germany.
Yeah, the Germans pulled it. Yeah.
So I'm assuming like Rumble and places like that. Unfortunately, Rumble doesn't work in Russia without a VPN as well. So I'm still unsure as to why. But I think all of these things are going to change very soon. So
you think sanctions are going to be lifted and whatnot? I don't know. Listen, I just think it's really awful the way a lot of American journalists lost their jobs. I was talking to a producer who happens to be an Italian guy from the States, and he's looking for work right now. It sucks how they throw everybody out on their ass. And all these cheerleaders, right, allegedly got money backdoor. All these pro-Zionist, pro-Trump cheerleaders in tenant media, and they're not journalists. Tim Cass is not a journalist. Benny Johnson, not a journalist. I'm saying all these names.
They're influencers.
They're not fucking journalists. They are.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now it's the age of influencers, and you have to really. I think people who want to do actual like journalism, whether it's citizen journalism or like any kind of real journalism, are going to have a hard time fighting that, because it's all about the numbers and how many followers you have. Even if they're fake, there's no digging. That's all that matters. They think, and this is true of people of all the regions, they think that maybe their message can get across if they can get somebody with a following, and then they discover, it doesn't really translate. It doesn't. It becomes about the person, the influencer, not about the actual story, which is something, that I've been discussing with some friends as to how to get their message without necessarily relying on those sorts of things. But it's happening too in media. They're looking for these influencers. People
I don't even think they're looking, fam. I think
that.
there's something going on behind closed doors, in fact, where they're being lifted up. And until we get transparency across the board, until Elon has to show his homework online, and now he won't, right? Because Donald Trump's
Yeah.
not going to push him for it. The administration is not going to push him for him. As long as he's doing their dirty work, then they'll be silent. They're not really interested in you, the people, seeing everything, having the transparency. The same way in our elections, the way we have transparency in Nicaragua and in Honduras and all these other elections that we witnessed, right? They don't care to show you the transparency of what's going on. The least you know, the better. The less you know, the better, fam. And that's what's going on. And now we're completely off topic as far as providing transparency. I literally heard somebody saying, well, with Donald Trump's executive order, aren't we transparent now? Isn't the censorship gone? I'm like, what has happened? What has happened? What have they done? They just told you that, and you believe that because, once again, all they're looking for is confirmation bias.
So let's dive into the 40,000 Palestinians, because I was actually surprised you brought this out. So I'm very happy you did, but I didn't expect you to cover this. I expected you to cover something else. I don't know.
Well, let's get into this because it's a great article. I mean, you can never sleep on freaking antiwar.com, right? Israeli defense minister says 40,000 forcibly displaced Palestinians in the West Bank can't return home. And fam, this is something really significant. I think when the tanks were sold by the Germans, given to the Ukrainians, and we saw tanks once again moving east in Europe into Asia, it was really, really scary. I mean, it should have been shock therapy for a lot of people. We see this again. We saw this in World War II. It was okay. People just slept on it. Israeli tanks are now operating in the occupied West Bank for the first time since 2002. He put that ahead of his name. He put that ahead of his date because you should just stew on that. Israeli tanks are now operating in occupied West Bank for the first time since 2002. Israeli Defense Minister Israeli Katz said Sunday that the Israeli military has forcibly displaced 40,000 Palestinians in northern occupied West Bank and that they couldn't return home as the IDF will be operating in the area over the next year, raising fears of a new ethnic cleansing campaign. The Israeli military launched the current operation in the West Bank dubbed Iron Wall, fam, on January 21st. It has been focused on the northern cities of Jenin and Tulkarm, but has spread elsewhere into the occupied territory. In the new escalation, Israeli tanks entered the West Bank on Sunday for the first time since 2002. Katz said in a statement that he ordered the Israeli military to prepare for an extended stay in the camps that have been cleared for the coming year and not to allow residents to return. Fam, I mean, I have to just stop. Show the picture there. I mean, what happened to us Americans? What happened to you capitalists out there who believe in property rights? You're funding this. You're paying for this. The $1 billion that just went over there to Israel, you think it's going to be used to feed the Palestinians and give them good water? No, it's going to be used to displace them. Fam, they literally kicked out 40,000 Palestinians. Get the hell out of here. You don't belong here. Take a hike, pal. 40,000 of them, and said you can't return home. Your thoughts? That should be fucking mind-blowing as is.
I mean, it's what they've been doing for 70 years. This is what Israel has been doing for 70 years. I mean, what else are we going to say? This is their MO. This is what they do. They get away with it. Well, I mean, people are still fighting, and I'm not trying to be rude here, but they're still fighting for arrest warrants for Netanyahu and all these people. Guys, I'm sorry, but that's symbolic. They're not going to go to prison. They're not, unless you change what the UN is, which is a tool of the West, essentially, and the oppressive governments and the governments that stand by and do nothing, really. You're not going to see that. People still conduct business with Israel. The Saudis, you still have relationships with Israel, including with Russia and China. You have, even though they're not the same type of level, you have those relationships. They until people actually punish Israel economically and even militarily defend Palestine, you're not going to see any change. It doesn't matter how many arrest warrants they issue for Netanyahu and for the entire Israeli cabinet and all of these people. It doesn't matter because they're not going to be held accountable. It's just not going to happen. So this is why they can continue doing that.
Yeah. Let's this is the thing. I don't think we can get this on the internet because not USA Today, the New York Times blocks several articles. You got to join them, but you can put the title up there real quick so people can see it because it's very simple. And it said right there in the cover, if Gaza truth ends in days, what is next, right? Gaza truth could end in days with no extension agreed. What happens next? And it says less than a week before it expires, Israel and Hamas have failed to agree to extend the ceasefire in Gaza. Here's how the deal could still continue and what happens if it doesn't. Well, it's not going to continue. And I'm going to say why it's not going to continue, because it was never, ever intended to continue. It was just simply a pause for a political ploy for all those people who are supporting Donald Trump to say, look, he's coming up with peace deals. Look at this. We heard somebody say he should get a Nobel Peace Prize, right? How many times have they broken the ceasefire? A ceasefire is no such thing in Israel or occupied Palestine because Israel never ceases to fire. Not since 1946. They're never going to stop. They never intended on stopping. But as you read into the article, and you can just leave that up there, Jayme, because I'll read off the newspaper I got right here and the points I want to point out. The deal struck in the final days of the Biden administration allowed for the initial 6-week truce, which ends on March 1st. Okay? The sides agreed to use the time to gradually exchange roughly 1,500 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails for 33 hostages captured by Hamas and its allies during the raid that ignited the war in 2023. I just want to point this out, fam. Even and these are the kind of details that sometimes they slip oops that could really hurt their narrative. If they have to exchange and give 1,500 Palestinian prisoners up for 33 Israeli prisoners, fam, who's really taking the prisoners here, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
Who's really taking the prisoner? That explains to it right now. And this in the New York Times, all it will do is act like it's a situation in which both sides can't get along. Therefore, this is why it's continuing. No. Even what Donald Trump said. When Donald Trump said plain and simple, hey, we should take over Gaza, right? Let us take it over. We'll make it beautiful again. Well, that immediately contradicted the terms of the second phase. And the terms of the second phase was that Israel was supposed to pull out of these territories and let the Palestinians take it back in Gaza. Not only did they not do that, and I also want to point out that the 40,000 Palestinians are gone. The last $100 million payment from Marion Adelson, which it has been close to $300 million after the 3 cycles, the 3 presidencies, the 3 campaigns for president, in which the Adelson checkbook has written money to Donald Trump for pro-Zionist favors. This particular $100 million went specifically to make sure that the West Bank could be occupied by Israeli forces. Now they've kicked 40,000 people out. So Donald Trump is delivering on his promise. In fact, he tells you one thing, it's a complete distraction, and he does something else, right? Now with this coming after March 1st, with this kicking back in, well, Donald Trump has sent over 2,000-pound bombs, the big bombs, fam. Like I said, Israel doesn't even have the planes to drop them. So who's going to drop them? American planes. So will we be fighting in this war for them? Your tax dollars will be going towards that. And Donald Trump has also agreed to give Israel an additional $7 billion moving forward. This is disgusting. This is ethnic cleansing. And instead of pulling back and finding peace, they're furthering their pro-Zionist agenda, fam. That's what's going on.
So what they're doing, and this kind of will go into our next segment. And before we go into our next segment, Jayme, I added that Donald Trump video that I think people need to see, the AI-generated video from Sky News channel.
Let's do it.
But look, what's happening is they're pivoting away from Russia, Ukraine to pivot into Iran and China, right? And they're trying to isolate Russia from China. And they're also trying to isolate Iran using the Gulf. This is part of the Abraham Shield plan. This is also part of Greater Israel. part of the Abraham Accords. All of these things are going in line with the fall of Syria. Lebanon is vulnerable geography-wise, right? You have Lebanon, and then which is a very tiny country, right? It's officially the Republic of Lebanon, right? And then you have next to it in the north and to its east, you have Syria. This is why, for example, you have people who left Syria, who came into Lebanon via the south of Syria and I would say the west of Syria. Then you have south of Lebanon, you have the West Bank. But who controls the West Bank? It's Israel. That's why you saw, the Palestinian, the West Bank there next to the Israeli military. And that's where, I think Marandi was there. A lot of us went, but Marandi recently did a video, Saeed Mohammed Marandi from Iran, professor. He did a video saying, look, Israel's right there, blah, 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 because Lebanon is surrounded. And so since this has happened, now what you have is the possibility of Israel continuing its expansion by attacking both Hezbollah and any facets of the resistance. Yemen is also coming into play for the resistance. But, that doesn't mean that without, say, Iran, things are going to go full force. They're not going to stop fighting. I'll tell you that. The resistance in itself, it's not going to stop fighting ever. You can't kill that spirit. But it makes it a lot harder for them when you have the United States now facilitating everything for Israel. And you're going to have, as Pasta said, American, U.S. boots on the ground more, because there were a few, but now there's going to be more. And they're going to ensure that things carry out as planned in favor of Israel. And this is all part of all of that plan. So, it's more war in the Middle East. It's more war there. But who cares if we're going to end the war in Ukraine, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Which, once again, I don't want to even talk about. We never talk about the part that Donald Trump played in making sure that the Kiev regime was continually armed. This whole kind of like, we shouldn't get involved in Syria. Homeboy, you've been involved. You're the one who said, we saw the oil, we took the oil. And by the way, Albert Bull is here. Let's give him a round of applause. Boo! The guy is so disconnected, and he doesn't care what you think. They're going to just go along with plan. It goes back to what he said that one time. I can take out a gun and kill somebody on Central Avenue, and nobody will care. You're absolutely right. The hero worshiping is strong with this one. I haven't seen this type of hero worshiping. And in fact, I've seen it more now with Donald Trump than a Barack Obama that we saw with the shit libs that he could do no wrong. This is just ridiculous in which Donald Trump, and he does these other moves in which he makes you think he's providing you transparency. So a lot of people say, well, at least we get some good with the bad. No, we don't. The plan is moving ahead. The fourth industrial revolution is here. It's moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. Let's play this video. This is the video I was talking about.
Donald is coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new life. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new life. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1.
Some disgusting shit there.
Yeah,
that is some disgusting shit. Elon can eat a dick. Trump can eat a dick. Netanyahu can too. Sorry, fam. I don't mean to say that, but screw them.
Disgusting. It really is
disgusting shit.
When you go to Lebanon or when you go to these places, Iraq, Iran, you see just the beauty of all these. And West Bank, where I went, occupied Palestine. There's some of the nicest people, by the way, some of the best food, the best hummus, the best, olives you'll have, just delicious bread. I mean, it's just the hospitality in these places is astounding, especially if you're a Westerner, which is, there's a lot of layers to that. I'm not going to get into right now, but there's, these are beautiful places, and to just completely just wreck it with Donald Trump and Elon and the Western billionaire technocrats just going in there and turning it into freaking another Abu Dhabi, another Dubai, right? This is what their plan is. If you've been to Israel and seen Tel Aviv, that's what they did. That's what Tel Aviv is. It's exactly, it looks just like that. You know, high-rise luxuries, full of just elite type of culture, capitalist mentality, just boom, boom, boom. And then you see when you go into Ramallah, when you go into the occupied part of Palestine, that's now obviously they're in greater danger than ever. You see that there's still farmland, olive trees. You see the houses are built different. They're people of the earth. It's completely different. And these two worlds are clashing, right? And you see the West's destructive nature and the disgusting fakeness of it all. I mean, just Dubai is one of the fakest things ever. Okay. And short story, I met one person there that I didn't take a liking to, because one of the first things out of their mouth was, "Oh, my favorite, most beautiful country in the world is Dubai." And I was like, just absolute the most beautiful place in the world. Are you serious? It's like the fakest place in the world. And you know, this mentality of this capitalist, so just very egocentric, narcissistic, it's all reflected in Donald Trump, right? And he's just the same. It's the same type of, it's just Joe Biden's the same way. It's really sad, especially when you go to these places and you see how the people are just so different. You know, like when we went to Nicaragua, Pasta, and we saw like how people from Bilwi took us in and how kind they were and how they were just willing to share all of these things with us. It's the same thing, just in a different place. In spite of all the suffering that they've had, in spite of everything, they're just so willing to be kind. Yeah, and it's disgusting seeing that. I have no other way to say it. It's just gross.
Yeah, it's bad.
Unbelievable.
That's it for that section. Let's get to the last section of the day, fam.
Yeah. So this is kind of going along the lines, fam, of what we've been talking to, because a lot of people might not like what I'm about to say here, but this isn't necessarily going to be a good thing in the long run, especially not for Russia. So there's been a meeting between the Kremlin and Donald Trump in terms of just different officials going and having conversations. There hasn't been a face-to-face Trump-Putin meeting yet. That's still in the works. But you've had multiple talks, right? You've had these conversations. So the Kremlin on Sunday via Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson, said that the dialogue between Donald Trump and Putin was between two extraordinary presidents. And they said this was promising. And they also said they're not going to give up any of the territory that they got from Ukraine. And so earlier, you guys recall that he phoned Vladimir Putin discussing how to end it all. Then there was the flurry of US and Russian top officials meeting in Saudi Arabia to talk about restoring ties, possible ceasefire in Ukraine, and economic development, as well as what's going to happen in Ukraine. We know Zelensky wasn't involved because he's just a puppet, and that's the truth. And so basically, Europe is freaking out, Zelensky's freaking out, but there's been more and more, I guess you would say, excitement as to what's happening. And Putin had said in the article, they talk about how Putin had said that God and fate had entrusted him and his army with the mission to defend Russia. Fate willed it so, God willed it so, if I may say so. A mission as difficult as it is honorable. Defending Russia has been placed on our and your shoulders together, he told people who were fighting in Ukraine. Because on Sunday, it was the Defender of the Fatherland Day, which is like Men's Day in Russia. We have Women's Day and Men's Day. Women's Day is March 8th. Men's Day was this past Sunday. And it just talks about, giving respect to soldiers and veterans in general, because obviously Russia from the Soviet era was marred by just war and all of that. So so he made this special speech. Now I want to focus on the other thing that is huge here is the US backing this UN resolution that was on Ukraine,
Yeah.
on the Ukraine war. And this is, again, I want everybody to look at this as like different moves towards a strategic and the Brzezinski model. So, on the third anniversary of the invasion, Trump says he is talking to Moscow about economic development deals as Washington's posture in the region shifts. The U.S. sided with Russia and China to win the United Nations Security Council's backing for a resolution crafted in D.C. that didn't blame Moscow for the Ukraine war and called for a swift end to the conflict, as Trump had said he was in talks. So the vote was voted in favor by United States, Russia, and China, and it was voted against by Europe, the EU, and obviously Ukraine. Those were the main players that we were all focused on, right? And so, what do you make of that, Pasta? I want to hear what you think of that. Of now, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, this has never happened. This is crazy that the United States is siding with Russia and China." What are the possible theories that you have for this happening? Because I definitely have one.
Yeah.
It's not a good one.
Well, I'm more curious to hear yours. To me, what I'm just trying to say, what I'm thinking, what's in front of us is the fact that we have all been waiting for certain concessions to be made. I think a lot of us felt that the Syria falling situation had a lot to do with Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, Syria and Assad was allowed to exist because they had the backing of the Kremlin, and all of a sudden, one day it fell. And I think a lot of us been waiting to see what types of concessions are made for each side. And you've told me some stuff off the record, that make me very concerned. But once again, those backdoor talks have not come to fruition. This seems like one of those dominoes inside that kind of deals that are made. Okay, we'll acknowledge the fact that, Russia wasn't just the only ones to blame there, that they were part of the problem, but, it doesn't take them off their position to continue to fund and support the Ukrainians. It just says that it was more than one aggressor, right? Yeah. Because I felt that was kind of backfiring in a way in which they were trying to put it solely based upon the Russian government, that this is just Vladimir Putin. He woke up one day and wanted to restore the old USSR, so it's Russia to blame. It's like what Tulsi Gabbard had to say in her confirmation hearing. Who's to blame for what happened? Putin. You know what I'm saying? That type of language, I think that the Trump's administration can go and back off that and say, okay, look, we'll come to the table on that. We will show the free world in the UN that will vote along the point that it wasn't just you and the reasons why this war was started in the first place, but it doesn't really completely pull back the position of what the United States is doing, and more importantly, what they can do moving forward. They can still say, all right, yeah, you were the only ones who started it, but you're not being reasonable over here. You're not meeting us in concessions. We're going to continue to fund this war. So it doesn't really change a lot of things. It only changes a little bit of the optics. But, fam, what is it, 3 years too late for that now?
Yeah, so I agree with you. Look, this is largely symbolic. There is no meat to this. There's no teeth to this. But people took it and ran. Oh my goodness, this is literally how you narrative manage. This is PR, right? This is good PR for the Trump administration. This has long been planned. This Russia, Ukraine, US deal before the fall of Syria. There was talks about this before all of that. Donald Trump was tasked to clean up that mess, right? He initially gave the money. Biden did it. Now Trump comes in as if he's just going to clean it up. Well, he's tasked to do this. This is what this administration will do. This needs to happen in order for the US to pivot. And so he was able to do this. And by siding with Russia and China in a symbolic gesture, it's going to elicit, wow, look what Trump's doing. This is historic, blah, blah, blah. And in a way, on its front, it is, but really there's nothing that comes out of this except that we're understanding that the US now suddenly wants to end this war. But people are asking themselves why that is. They're not asking themselves why exactly now at this point. They're thinking that it's because Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and he just wants to end the war. They're putting it on Trump. But if you actually believe that there is a deep state and that, presidents don't run the country, because that didn't just go away just because it's Trump, guys. If you believe that, you can't just switch back and forth and say, look, now suddenly Trump comes in and he's in control. No, guys, this is again, he's part of this whole thing. So going along with that is added to the mineral situation, because we have this talk about the minerals. And again, as Pasta pointed out, the same thing in the Middle East, the same thing with Gaza. There's also the fourth industrial revolution taking place in these areas in Donbass and parts of Russia that have been just untapped, really. There is so much mineral potential. There's so many minerals that, like copper, you have gold, you have iron, you have all of these minerals that are necessary for the fourth industrial revolution. And so in this article, Jayme, let's go through the article because because it's important. So Ukraine said that it agreed to the terms of this preliminary deal that's going to give the U.S. access to deposits of rare earth minerals. Again, these minerals vital to the next phase. And Zelensky said he hoped the agreement with the U.S. will lead to further deals, but said that no American security guarantees have been agreed yet. Trump said that this would help American taxpayers get their money back for aid sent to Ukraine throughout the war and give Kiev the right to fight on against Russia. So Trump's like, I got to give him credit for playing Zelensky, because this is exactly what he's doing. And I believe he is also trying to play Russia, whether by he, I mean the United States. Whether or not they bite into this is left to be determined. But what are the terms of the deal? Let's look at what was said. A lot of this hasn't been made public, but there's like a lot of rumors, right? So there's the investment fund that would be set up for Ukraine's reconstruction. In essence, guys, that means that Ukraine is not an independent country, and we've known this, but this sort of further supports that assertion. Ukraine's going to be rebuilt by the United States, and Russia, is going to allow that. And then Washington, the United States, is going to control the amount of money that's spent, essentially. And Ukraine would then contribute, if you can scroll up, 50% of the future proceeds from these mineral resources, oil and gas, to fund. And then the fund would be invested in projects in Ukraine itself. So it's kind of like you're just moving the resources around, right? And so the US is just basically going to own the most amount of the fund, but not necessarily all of it. So they're basically, Trump is throwing this at Zelensky, like, this is a good deal for you, take it. If you don't take it, you're screwed, essentially. It's not a good deal for Ukraine, but what do they have left? Ukraine's completely destroyed. They've been completely rendered dependent on the EU and the United States more than anything. Europe has been bankrupt, right? And so who wins out of all of this? The United States, the defense industry, not the people of the US, but we're talking about the big guys here, the players, right? And so it's crazy. And Trump, by the way, highlighted that the US had given Ukraine between 300 billion and 350 billion, and he wanted this money back through this, right? So it's kind of crazy that this is happening, but I think it's pretty obvious that Trump is trying to pull one over Russia as well. And I want to pull up this Breitbart article too, because this is kind of crazy. In the construct of everything, right? Because you have the other thing that I forgot to say is that Putin is entertaining the idea of allowing the United States. This is completely important. I think I forgot the article for it. But Trump is allowing, Trump wants to access those minerals in Russia as well. And Putin is supposedly entertaining the idea of allowing the Americans, the United States, to come in and mine these minerals and to have access to them. So I just want to point that out. That is a huge, huge thing. And that would be, I think, destructive to Russia, because if there's anything I know is in the long run, same as I said with Venezuela, if you involve the United States and allow them to have access to something, they will not leave. They will stay there and they will not stop until they take all of it, or in some form or another, control it. And if Russia falls for that, thinking that this is a good deal because this is not, maybe it's not too much and we're going to have control over it, I'm telling you, it's going to come back and bite them in the ass so hard.
Let me give you my opinion about this, and this is where I think maybe we have a little bit of the differences. I think that the majority of the Earth's minerals and everything that they wanted to get is already under the control right now. A lot of it of Russia, right?
Yeah.
I think Russia will give some concessions and give some of it back, but they're not going to give all of it back. I think they'll agree to give some of the stuff back in order to make a deal. But I do want to make this point clear that Zelensky is not, in my personal opinion, making any decisions whatsoever.
Yeah.
Just like Gonzalo Lero said before he was tortured and killed in a Ukrainian prison, the finger puppet of Zelensky is Zelensky is just the finger puppet of Kolomoisky. Kolomoisky, a Ukrainian Zionist oligarch, really makes the majority of the deals there within that situation. He's the one who funded. He's like what Peter Thiel is to J.D. Vance is what Kolomoisky was to Zelensky. He made him, funded all his projects, his career, and now we have those particular people in the front acting like they're making decisions. I don't think Zelensky is going to make any decisions. In fact, that's why he was left out, you said, and they can just hem and haw the conservative media that Trump is now abusing Zelensky. And like they said, once again, how does somebody come forth and say, well, I want the money back for all the money we spent? Yeah, but you're the ones, it was your country who spent the money, who forced the proxy war. Now you want money to pay yourself back because you chose to attack us? If they can play this as a Biden war, as Biden's decisions and not, Donald Trump's, and make no mistake about it, there's a lot of leeway there because, crowdsource came out of Ukraine. It had a lot to do with the election, had a lot to do with things going on. But once again, I want to point this out. These are Zionist oligarchs. There are pictures with Kolomoisky and Ariel Sharon in the Knesset. He's very close to them. He's got passports to 3 countries, right? Israel and Ukraine being 2 of them. So don't mistake it for 1 second to think like on the surface that Zelensky had any power or whatnot going on. There's decisions being made behind them. And like I said, fam, I think a lot of the minerals that have been taken over by the Russians as they got into the Donbass and expanded the front line, they might give some of them back, but they're not going to give all of them back. And really, to say the truth, what I see is the Russian Federation taking, its time going, this ain't freaking Afghanistan and the Mujahideen and the Russians. You failed. It's a multipolar world now. You're going to either play with us or that's it. We could take Kiev if we wanted to tomorrow. How much? Excuse me. You know how many mainstream media journalists and the ones like Joy Reid, go out there, and Nicole Wallace, and repeat this lie that Russia was stopped trying to take Kiev? No, they pulled back as a sign of good faith to get something on paper to stop this war early on. But the United States, they wouldn't allow it. Neither would the West. Neither would Boris Johnson. Remember Boris Johnson going to Zelensky and saying, you can't do this? Zelensky was never, ever, ever in charge, ladies and gentlemen.
I just want to say, I agree that Russia has, so east of Moscow, right? You have also a lot of untapped rare earth minerals, a lot of untapped resources from Russia that the West wants. This is one of the reasons why they want to balkanize Russia. The West is not going to stop that site. They're just not going to pay attention to it right now. If Russia gives them something, I understand that thought process. But if you give them access to this later on, they're going to expand like Israel. They're because if you've seen what's happened around Eastern Europe, right? With Moldova, with Georgia, all of these countries, they're trying to turn them against Russia. And the entire point isn't even about Russia, is they want to access these minerals to compete against China. Essentially, they're in an economic war, the United States is with China, and they will escalate to a military war if necessary, which is why they're trying to build bridges with Russia in order to isolate Russia from China, because the end goal is to defeat China, because they see it as a economic superpower, which also has a vast military. But with Russia and Iran, that alliance, the United States cannot fight against that. If you isolate the three and one by one pick off the axis of resistance and the different points of that are resisting the empire in the global south, then it's a much easier thing to achieve. And when we talk about multipolarity, what does that mean when there's Israel existing in the Middle East and the United States threatening to turn Gaza into luxury property? Is that a multipolar world? Maybe you're going to have China and Russia and the United States and, a new age of just three powerful worlds, existing, but it's not multipolar in the sense of equality or equity of any sorts. It's just means that the power structure is kind of one and the same. There's a possibility if China doesn't fight back, that they also too come in to normalize relations with the United States. Right now, what is being played is to try to get Russia away from China. Whether or not the United States succeeds depends on the steps that Russia is taking right now. And I will say that Russia as a government is extremely pragmatic, and they're looking at their security guarantees. They're not looking to fight US imperialism. That is not what Russia's doing. They have never advocated that. They've always advocated to fight as a government for their security interests and for the justice that their people in the Donbass deserve under the UN protocols. They always refer to the UN protocols and the UN Charter.
International law. It's always they always show that they're paying attention. They're abiding by the rules. Why doesn't the United States abide by the rules in the West?
But who makes the rules? And
so they've had these laws, these rules that have allowed them to opt out anytime they want, fam.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, the other thing, so about China, right? We have the Breitbart article. If you can put that one back on here, I'll put it up. So Marco Rubio told Breitbart, and this is why I want to talk about this stuff, that Donald Trump and his administration are aiming to peel Russia off of China. This is exactly what I'm talking about. In much of the same way former President Richard Nixon did during the Cold War, peeling China off the Soviet Union. We are back here, except this time the Soviet Union is no more and it's Russia. The difference is the Soviet Union was an ideological government. They were ideologically driven. Russia, the current Russia government, is not. And I want to make sure people understand the difference in those actions. Resistance, ideologically driven. You have Hezbollah, Hamas. These people, if it's not convenient, it doesn't matter. They will fight even if it's not convenient, right? That's one thought process. Russia will not engage in something if it's not convenient for them. And these are two modes of thought. If you look at it in this way, you would say Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, right? The resistance is Iran. I mean, in many ways, you have that resistance. If that resistance doesn't continue or it is brokered in some form or fashion, and you have the government that is going to act pragmatically for self-preservation, then that is diametrically opposed to that resistance. So what I'm saying is we're repeating the cycle, but this time Russia is not the Soviet Union. And Marco Rubio said, I don't know if we will ever be successful completely at peeling them off a relationship with the Chinese. And Rubio said this when he was asked if Trump's efforts to end the war in Ukraine are similar to Nixon's famous moment of heading to China to curb the Soviet Union. I also don't think having China and Russia at each other's neck is good for global stability because they're both nuclear powers. I mean, he's telling you exactly what it is, guys. But I do think we're in a situation now where the Russians have become increasingly dependent on the Chinese, and that's not a good outcome either if you think about it. So again, they want to break this relationship. Rubio said that the US-China relations will define this century, and as such, the better outcome for both the Russians and Americans is that the Russians are not purely dependent on China as a junior partner. But China isn't a junior partner. China is actually the bigger partner.
Now,
Yeah,
now for
let's
sure
be
too. They've moved
yeah,
it even
now.
closer.
If you can scroll up, Jayme. The big story of the 21st century is going to be the US-Chinese relations, Rubio said. If Russia becomes a permanent junior partner to China in the long term, now you're talking about two nuclear powers aligned against the United States. And by the way, they're not even mentioning Iran, but they're also looking at that as well. And even 10 years from now or 5 years from now, if this trend continues, we would find ourselves in a situation where whether Russia wants to improve its relations with the US or not, they can't because they've become completely dependent on the Chinese because we have cut them off. I don't know if that's a good outcome for us. What's a better outcome for us is to have a relationship. We're going to be we're going to be in competition and maybe even in direct confrontation, not militarily, I hope, but otherwise with the Chinese because they're doing all kinds of cheating and stealing when it comes to trade and economics. We're going to have disagreements with the Russians, but we have to have a relationship with both. These are big, powerful countries with nuclear stockpiles. They can project power globally. I think we have lost the concept of maturity and sanity in diplomatic relations. Part of diplomatic relations is the ability. Hold on, did you scroll up? Part of diplomatic relations is the ability to communicate with and manage through problems with other great powers around the world to avoid war and to avoid conflict. But I think having a situation where the Russians are permanently a junior partner to China, having to do whatever China says to do because they are dependent on them, I don't think that's a good outcome for Russia, and it's not a good outcome for America or for Europe or for the world. So, Pasta, in essence, what he's saying here is that they don't want Russia and China to continue to be allies because it's not beneficial for the United States. They're throwing in that it's not beneficial for Russia, but it's really about us. Let's be real.
Yeah.
And because they know that alliance is an extremely strong threat to the United States, especially in terms of unipolar power and in terms of having Iran also on that end, which they hope to use Israel to basically just crush that in itself. And they're also talking about the possibility of China basically giving in to the United States and having a relationship with the United States that is okay enough, but it doesn't threaten them economically. So it's going to be what's going to be defining is how China and Russia both act. And by the way that Russia is acting, normalizing relations with the Gulf, the entire Gulf, with Turkey, now with the United States, it looks like Russia is willing to have this type of relationship. It's left to be determined if China is. And we're going to see that because if the United States manages to push a wedge between the two or to turn China into a possible ally, you're not really going to see a multipolar world. What you're going to see is just a rebranded version of what we have divided into three parts. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, need to take off the rose-colored glasses when they talk about multipolarity and really talk about this. It's not as just great as, oh yeah, the US suddenly, Marco Rubio, one of the most warmongering neocons that we have in our government, doesn't want to fight these people. No, it's just they've what is it what you always tell me? You
What?
can catch more bees with honey.
Here's the thing. I think there's one thing to really you have to really factor it in. I think you've said it perfectly. At the end of the day, China and Russia both do not want to take on the empire. It's not one of their goals. I mean, China never has any military actions whatsoever. They haven't had anything since 1973, right? Despite them selling drones maybe to Saudi Arabia at one point to use to kill against the Yemenis, to try to establish some relationships with them to be able to buy and sell oil in yuan and not the petrodollar. I think that was the laying out of that. And Vanessa Beeley rightfully called China on doing so because those drones were used to kill Houthis in Yemen. But once again, a very peaceful nation, a nation that doesn't get involved with military actions. Like I said, the last time, 1973, that was the year I was born, fam. So I can tell you confidently that in April, I'll be 52 years old. That's a long time. So I think they always look for that type of mentality. If they can do things at the negotiating table and not have to get involved, then they will do so. But however, with that being said, China and Russia will never, ever completely, ever trust the West ever again on anything, right? So even though they will make concessions and make deals themselves, and this is what this has always been about, right? The United States is going to try to keep China and Russia from working together because they are the two most second biggest superpowers aside from the United States. They control a lot of the resources. BRICS are here. And I think also, too, as well, this was the testing grounds, Ukraine, right, for what the West could do. I mean, remember, they used the Mujahideen and Stinger missiles, which they used the Uyghurs in China to get in those missiles, the Stinger missiles, into the Mujahideen to shoot down Russian helicopters and Russian warplanes at a high rate, which changed the whole war. And they essentially proxied a small radical army to get rid of the Russians and kick them out. That didn't happen this time, fam. And I think that's why the Russians are kind of, even though they are being open to sitting down at a negotiating table and say, let's do this, they're still saying, no, we're not going to trust you completely. We can take our time. We have our boot on their neck right now. We can take Kiev tomorrow if we really wanted to, but we don't want to because we don't want to expand the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union. We don't want to manage them, but we are not going to allow Nazis to be on our border. We're not going to allow you to have proxies anymore, and we're going to control enough territory, especially of ethnic-speaking Russians, to do so. So I am encouraged, though, by the fact that if they do sit down, and this does what Marco Rubio says, the lying through his teeth, it does affect. Remember when I said this before, fam, in the past, and you would always say, I don't think that's good enough, fam. Sometimes the rhetoric is better than the policy itself. If Donald Trump talks about peace, even though he's really not about peace, and people talk about peace and they incorporate that into their rhetoric, that is good. So if there's any conversation, it's almost like RFK said in the beginning of his campaign, I want to take on China economically, not militarily. In other words, I don't want to have proxies. I want to outwork them. Then that is good. Okay, if we're going to go back to the old school USA, right, like we're going to outwork you mentality, we're going to open up some manufacturing base, and we're going to get to work. We're going to start growing our own fruits and vegetables, take care of ourselves, then so be it. Because if we're spending more time doing it that way, taking on somebody economically rather than taking them on militarily, that's a big change. However, fam, I just feel that this is more smoke and mirrors. I think this is manipulating the conversations they have behind closed doors. I think they've exhausted everything. I can honestly say that even though I'm not in Russia and you are, that Putin and the Russian Federation doesn't want this to go on. They don't want to lose soldiers to this anymore. Yeah. So there has to be some conclusion. However, they're not going to give up the upper hand that they have created and that they've had only because they couldn't come to the table, Minsk 1, Minsk 2, everything before this, trying to work out a deal where this wouldn't happen. I'd said this before. The Russian Federation and along with Vladimir Putin wanted the Donbass to be part of Ukraine, wanted ethnic-speaking Russians inside Ukraine because it would bring balance to trade deals in the future, and it wouldn't be just anti-Russian sentiments across the board, what we're seeing right now. So, I mean, this is going to be very, very interesting to see how it plays out, but I assume that this is just PR, what Rubio's doing, right? I mean, I have a segment being played on RTDE today about USAID and the NED. Fam, we have Bolivia coming up right now. Bolivia sits on, just like Peru, some of the most wealthiest lithium deposits out there. The fourth industrial revolution requires lithium, cobalt, and nickel more than ever. We're not going to walk away from that. So Marco Rubio didn't use the USAID, but he worked the opposition of Evo Morales, who started his own new party, by the way. He worked the opposition against Evo on the phone and providing support for him. They don't need the USAID and NED. And then your good friend Elon Musk said, we'll coup who we want to coup. So I think a lot of this is posturing and propaganda to feed the people out there, a lot of noise, rather than kind of confess to what's really going on behind closed doors. And what's really going on behind closed doors, even though there might be some disappointment in ways the resistance has acted as of late, giving up territories in Syria and kind of looking at giving up certain mineral deposits. There's a big change, and it's a multipolar world now, and the United States is trying to hide that fact more than anything. And when they do present it, they're presenting it as we're going to be peaceful, cooperative, and we're going to get along with it. And at the same side of his mouth, Rubio's talking about, okay, we have to stop the Belt and Road Initiative from China. So you have to look through and you have to look at the policies and the actions that are taking place, not just the rhetoric.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this multipolar world is exactly what people were envisioning. However, so I think people need to be ready for what that looks like. It just means maybe there's three, empire-like powers, three powers now that are going to exist, maybe four, depending on Iran. And what that means, is it going to mean that all of these governments then usher in this technocratic, takeover, like some people say, right? That they're going to usher in this type of one world government? Or does it mean that we're still going to have different pockets? And I believe like within governments, there's definitely conflict, whether it's in Russia, the United States, China. There's different people vying for different ideals and different objectives that they're vying for. So it's not as simple as just saying, okay, all of Russia or all of China or all of the US. We know that, right? And so I don't see this as positive as people see it, because what I think is going to happen is it's going to be used for the eradication of the Palestinian people, and the pivot against a war on Shia Islam. I think that's where we're going. And if the United States, and if the United States doesn't succeed in isolating China from Russia, then they're going to go towards more nefarious methods, because right now, like they're looking, okay, well, we'll make nice with China and Russia. And I think both, you're right, China and Russia won't fully trust the United States ever again. But I don't think it takes them fully trusting them. It takes only opening up to the wrong people. And trust me when I say that a lot of the people, smart people that you think should know better from these countries, you give us the benefit of the doubt way more than you think. They give our governments the benefit of the doubt way more than we understand, that way more than any of you would, to be honest. And that is a weakness that I have seen in these sectors. And it's not necessarily just naivety, but it is just a different way of thinking. Always trying to find a way to peace that the United States uses as weakness to try to pull the wool over someone's head. And I think that both China and Russia have to be very careful, but I also agree that they've not been people that resort to any sort of war. They've been much more diplomatic. And what is that going to mean? It's going to mean that perhaps they're diplomatic about Israel, an entity that doesn't deserve diplomacy, an entity that deserves to be completely destroyed. And so when we're talking about a multipolar world, if that ends with Gaza being leveled into high-rise luxury buildings and hotels and casinos by Trump and whoever and Kushner, I don't think a world built on that is a world that is in any way, shape, or form necessarily better than the last, because eventually that's also going to shift. And NATO is not going away. It's shifting, right? And I think we have to be very mindful of the difference between short term and long term. And like in the short term, what things may look like will be very different than in the long term. Pasta, remember how we play chess, right? This is kind of that in itself. I look at the long game, right, all the time. So yeah, in the short term, you may gain a few things. We may have the small piece. Same with the ceasefire and all of that. But in the long run, what's going to happen is something.
Well, the behavior's not changing. The actions are not changing. Fam, we got to wrap this up. It's 2 hours right here. We are over the time right now, guys. That's it for today. I have my show at 4:00 Eastern, which is in 53 minutes on WBAI, the call-in show. We're going to talk about a lot of the same stuff that Fiorella was alluding to right here, the Hassan Nasrallah, funeral. We're going to talk a little bit about the Palestinians getting into the West Bank, but of course that is the Israelis bringing tanks into the West Banks to expel the Palestinians, 40,000 of them. First time since 2002 those tanks are there. We want to thank you all for watching. All the links down below are to help us out are here. We'll be back on Friday, fam. Are you going to be out of town or are you going to be here for that one?
No, I'll be here for Friday.
Friday should be here. I'll probably be on Matt Weinglass's show tomorrow too as well. Unless, fam, you want to jump on there too. You can always jump on Matt Weinglass's show, but that's tomorrow. The homeless left. He'll probably be back with us next Monday. Sorry we missed Monday's show. That's why we're having this show today. Fam, anything else to tell the audience before we get on out of here?
No, that's it. Look out for another Substack article and more reporting on what happened in Lebanon. So, yeah.
All right. That's it for today, guys. Screw Tulsi Gabbard. Her Islamist comments are just ridiculous. I am Craig Pasta-Jardula. This is Fiorella for CheeseSlice on the ones, twos. Thank you so much, and truth out.
Bye.